Hi Flosstube friends, it's Sheri, ColoradoCrossStitcher. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for coming and joining me again today. And thank you for all your fun comments and your subscriptions and your thumbs up. And it's just, I really love reading all your comments and I try and answer all of them. So thank you for doing that. I want to talk about subscribing to Flosstubers. I subscribe to a lot of different Flosstube channels, and it's like having a little library of choices to choose from when I want to sit down and stitch. So I encourage you to find lots of different types of Flosstubers. I know some people do samplers and so they want to watch all the sampler Flosstubers, and some people don't do samplers so they want to not watch all the Flosstubers who do samplers. And I just subscribe to a variety of a lot of different people, and some of them do the things I like and some of them do things that aren't necessarily my style, but I feel like it's helps round me out in what's available in cross stitching, and I learn things. I think I shared on my first video that I tend to be talked into working on some different styles sometimes. It was Stitching with Reese who got me to get my first GGR pattern, which really I didn't think was necessarily my style, and the more I saw it, the more I fell in love with it. So it is kind of fun to have different types of Flosstubers that you watch. And like I said, it's wonderful to go into your YouTube channel and have lots of choices to pick from. So thank you for subscribing to me and watching my video. And thank you to all of the Flosstubers out there that I subscribe to and I learn so much from. It's always been really fun. Alright, last video I shared Stitcher's exercises with you, and I was happy that so many of you felt like they were comfortable to do and they maybe even helped a little bit. I think the biggest thing is remembering to do them. So I decided I need to make a little card to keep in my project bags that just say stretch, and that will remind me to do all of those different exercises, you know, before and after I stitch. It's really good to do them before and after. So I'm going to try and do that. Make a little tag for myself. All right, last time the question of the day was, do you leave the stitcher's name on the piece if you're stitching a sampler, or do you substitute your own name or your relatives' names? And it was so interesting to read all of your comments. I'm estimating in my comments about 2/3 of you said if you're stitching reproduction samplers, it's important to leave the name of the original girl or boy who stitched that. And about 1/3 of you say that you replace those names with your names or names of your relatives. And probably half of you said that you also add your initials and your date and you tuck it somewhere in the design, which I also do most of the time. I've been doing that probably since I started back in the 80s. I think the first person who taught me how to do cross stitching mentioned that, and so I do that. But there were some comments that I wanted to highlight because I thought that they really made me think and they had some good points. So Janice pointed out that when doing reproduction samplers, it's good to include the original person's name and date and your name and date, and that prevents it from being mistakenly sold as an original sampler. And she said they've had problems with that, and I had no idea that people were restitching samplers as antiques, or possibly you know, somebody passed away and their family members didn't know and sold it off as an original antique from back in 1890 whatever, or 1870 something. And you could see how that happened, especially nowadays with hand-dyed fabrics made to look old. And so I thought that was a really good point. We want to make sure that our samplers are never sold as an original old sampler. Lynette commented that if she had inherited pieces from her grandmothers, she would want their names stitched on it and not the names of the original designer. And I thought that was a good point too, because yeah, if my grandma had made something and I got it, I certainly would want her name on that as a piece of her work and an example of her skills. So that was a good point. Stephanie and Jacqueline both made the comment that when people look back at our work 100 years from now, where are they going to find our names and our dates? They're going to look back and think, boy, those stitchers in the 1800s were so prolific. And in reality, it was the 1800s and then a lot of reproduction stitching that we've done. So that's something to think about. Where are they going to find our names? Where are they going to find the year 2020 on samplers? That's a good point. Mary suggested a solution that I love, and I think this is what I'm going to do on my future samplers. She suggested to stitch the original girl's name over one somewhere on the sampler, maybe down at the bottom, in a corner, but I love the over one suggestion. And I know not everybody likes stitching over one, but I thought that is a really good way to keep the name of the original gal, to minimize it a little bit so that you can put your name in or one of your relatives' names in. So I think that, sorry, I think that's what I'm going to do in the future, is maybe incorporate that name one over one. A few of you said something about stitching either your name or the original girl's name in the borders where it's tucked back around, and so you wouldn't necessarily see it on the finished piece, but it is there for posterity. So I also thought that was a good idea. Joanne talked about the importance of handwriting, and she said that she has a lot of things that her grandmother used to label, and now she loves seeing her grandma's handwriting on the backs of things. And I can so relate to that because I have recipes in my recipe box in my grandmother's handwriting and both grandmothers' handwriting. One of my grandmothers was from Germany, and she's just all of 4'11", tiny little gal. And when I come across one of her recipe cards in her handwriting in my recipe box, I can almost hear her little German voice talking to me. And that's just how powerful handwriting is. Now, I know some of you are going to say, oh, I hate my handwriting, you know, especially nowadays when we don't handwrite as often because we're on the computer so much. But whether you like your handwriting or not, it is an important part of your history and who you are. It's the handwriting that your kids saw on notes and letters from home. It's the handwriting they saw on grocery lists, on to-do lists, on reminder notes. And someday when you're gone and they see that handwriting, they're not going to be thinking, man, Mom had the worst handwriting. They're going to look at that and have such strong memories of you. And so I really want to encourage you, as Joanne said too, handwriting is so important. And if you can get in the habit of handwriting on the backs of your framed pieces on a little card, you know, they have, I think they sell library book pockets and cards. And if you can handwrite that information, that makes it even more special for future generations. So I was glad that she reminded me of that. That was really fun. We also talked in the last video about my problem with how I love 36 count, but I don't really like the coverage of 1 over 1 or 1 over 2 on 36 count. Not 1 over 1. That would be beautiful though. 1 over 2 on 36 count. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit when I talk about haul, because I'm going to try something. All right, so let's jump into progress. First of all, I have worked on my Brenda Keyes Plymouth sampler, which is appropriate right now because apparently September is sampler month. So the last time I showed you this, I had the blue house finished. Let's see if I can put this behind. I don't know if it matters. And so I did 2 more houses, and the willow tree and the couple. I really love working on this. This is 1 over 2 on 40 count mallow. So I've got a lot more to do, but I'm really having fun working on it. So I'm anxious to get back to that. And then I had a new start, and this is one of the patterns I showed you last time. Oh, but I don't know what I did with the pattern. Well, you should see my table. There's stuff all over my table. I'm not going to find the pattern. It is a sampler roll, though. And I know a lot of you guys have seen this one. And basically, it's finished where you roll it over. You make a roll like this, and you tie ribbons on the ends like this, although obviously it's stuffed. And it's a really creative kind of finish. It's a really cool way to finish a piece. I am not going to make it into a sampler roll because I want this on my sampler wall someday, and I want it framed. So although I think it's super creative, I'm actually not going to finish it that way. But it's hard to see on the pattern, which I'm not showing you, but there is a complete alphabet above and below that row of houses. And so I'm anxious to get in on that. I have to say, like, I'm not really excited about all of those greens in the lawn below the houses. And I know that the designer, this is by Samplers Remembered, I think. I know the designer was going from the original, and there are a lot of different colors of green in there, and this is a great match to that. I just think if I was going to redo it, I might just use a couple of greens in there instead of all of those different things going on. And then also one of the houses in the very middle, you've got this lovely row of, I'll show you again, all of these houses. And in the pattern, one of the houses in the middle is a bright green. And I just thought that was a little too eye-catching. I wanted the whole row of houses just to be sweet and calm and not just, what is wrong with that house in the middle kind of thing. And again, it is faithful to the original. I'm not so worried about having an exact reproduction, so I'm making a few changes on mine. But it is super fun to knit. It went, stitch. It went fast, and I'm looking forward to getting the rest of that finished. So those are my progresses. I also have another thing that I started and finished since last time, and that is this, Gathering Berries by Blackbird. Now here's a question I have for you. Are all of the Reward of Merit patterns that are small like this, are they eventually included in a Blackbird book? Because I've noticed that several of them have been, but I didn't know if that was a rule like all the time. Are these always included? This one I did on just a scrap piece of 18 count fabric that I had in my stash, and it was super quick to do. Again, I made the initials of our family in a different color. And that was an idea that I got from Daleen at So Grateful. And if you have not watched Daleen, she's super fun to watch, her Flosstube. So Grateful, S-E-W, grateful. So this was super quick to do, and I like to stitch on 16 or 18 count when I am going off somewhere else and don't have my magnifier lamp. So last week I went to visit my folks for a couple of days, and I'm not going to drag my whole big lamp stand along, but how can you go away for a couple days and not have stitching with you? So I always pick something that I can work on with, and I still use magnifying glasses. I'm telling you what, my eyes were 20/20 perfect my entire life until I don't know when, I guess my late 40s, but now I need the magnifier glasses. So I always try and pick something that I can see with just regular magnifiers and not my magnifying lamp stand when I go. So sometimes I stitch on 16 or 18 count. All right, so that is starts and finish. And I also did a start, a finish, and a fully finish since the last video, which, you know, I said on my first video, one of the reasons I wanted to do Flosstube is so I am encouraged to finish things. And Cameron made a good point in the comments last time. She said that framing is a way, framing or finishing, is a way to honor the piece. And that made me think, you know, a way to honor the piece, but also a way to honor your time and your skills in what you've made. So even if you are a process stitcher, and remember a process stitcher is somebody who enjoys the process of stitching more than necessarily the finished piece, I think we ought to maybe think about that, how finishing it or displaying it or even finishing it and giving it to a friend really is a way to honor the time and skills that you put into that piece. That was a really good point. So the one I did this time was Bittersweet September, which I've had in my stash for 3 years, I think. And I started it once, then realized there was over one stitching. That's when I first got back to cross stitching, and I didn't even know to look for those kinds of things. And so this is my start, finish, and fully finish. I did change the border, and I'll show you that again in a second. Actually, I took out the bittersweet, and I love bittersweet. Here's the pattern. But I wanted it to fit on this little frame easel kind of a thing. And I don't know, I just like the idea of a checkerboard. So this is just a little piece from Hobby Lobby, and it had a plaque underneath this that says something about gather and be grateful or something. But I knew it was going to be perfect as a finish for this. So that's what I did, covered up that little saying, and now it's got a really cute little backing and an easel that folds flat when I want to store that. And so on the edges I pinned it. I don't know where I saw that. Who was doing that? Maybe Lori, Mischievous Stitches, on one of her Instagrams, how you can take foam board and you pin it all the way around before you lace it, and that was super helpful. So I pinned it, but then you have all these stainless steel pins showing, so I covered it in, I don't know if you can see that, well, I don't know what it, I covered it with this gingham ribbon, but then I didn't like how it looked on the top, so then I just braided some orange jute rope and put that on top. So perfect for right now, because it is the season of fall. And even though it's just early September, I'm so ready for fall. I think when people start talking about going back to school, in my mind it's fall, and I want to do my whole house in fall. So this was a fun one to finish. And then I took that little Jeanette Douglas piece that I showed you last time. Let me pull the pattern out. This one that is actually one of the giveaways, so this is about to belong to one of you. And I just wanted to do the very middle part, so I did that and framed it. And I love how it turned out. Now I wanted to say something about this crazy colored frame. I have a sewing room in the basement, and I have a wall of small quilts and wool applique pieces that I've done, and now that I'm going to be better about framing my cross stitching, I want to put all my fun, happy colored frames down there. And when I do samplers, and I'm going to have a sampler wall, I'm going to be framing those in more traditional frames, but I love all of these fun frames at Hobby Lobby in all these different colors. So I try and get those when I can, and it just goes on my happy wall in the basement. So I was going to show you a couple of other pieces that go on my happy wall. So this is, I know this is eye-popping, huh? I think this is a Silver Creek Samplers, I think is the name of the designer. And I don't know, I had that really pretty piece of hand-dyed blue. I don't really know what it is because it was 2 years ago when I was not keeping track of such things. And I remember putting it on Instagram saying, okay, is this yellow frame like just too obnoxious? I mean, it's so bright, but you know what? It reminds me of a spring piece with the bird and the happy colors, and so it goes on my happy wall. And then another one that I framed, and that is, this was a club piece, and so it's this, but it is now available. There we go. It is now available in the Sewing Club book, which of course I also had to buy. And really, I was going through this book today just to make sure it's in there, thinking, why have I not started one of these? There's so many in this book I want to do. There's just never enough time. Okay, and so on this piece, trying to find the frame box, the focus box. On this piece, you'll notice that that house is blue, and it's an adorable, beautiful blue. But when I got this kit from Silver Needle, there was not enough pink to do the house, but there was plenty of blue, so I had to make my house blue. And that was the fabric they sent, and I think that was the fabric it's called for on the original pattern. And again, I framed it in a happy frame, and I'm putting it on my happy wall, and I love it. And we're not going to talk about how hard it is to frame checked fabric and how I don't do a great job at that, because you know what? It's framed and it's going on the wall so I can enjoy it. All right, and then also about happy frames, I wanted to tell you about frames at antique stores, because they're like a dime a dozen, not literally, but they're so cheap, and so many of them have been chalk painted. So here's an example of one that I got at an antique store that was chalk painted, and that just means somebody has taken that beautiful chalk paint and painted over an original wood frame. So this is the piece, and I really wanted that for my sewing room. Brenda Gervais needle and thread it's called. And so here is the finish on that in a happy frame. It was really fun to do, and I used some of my grandmother's buttons to add to that. The pattern calls for buttons on those trees, and so it was fun to add some of my grandma's buttons on that and have that in my sewing room. And then here's another frame that I bought at an antique store, and this is original paint. This has not been, oh look, this has not been chalk painted, but it's going to be a really fun frame for that wall of happy frames someday when I find just the right piece to put in there. And it's going to be a big one, and so I don't know. But anytime I see fun frames like this at antique stores, like I said, they're usually very, very reasonable in price, and all you have to do is cut foam board to insert in the back, and if you don't have someone that can cut foam board for you, they can cut you foam board to size at Hobby Lobby, and so that's fun as well. All right, so that's my thought on happy frames. Now let me look at my list on what else. I've gone off topic, I'm sure. Okay, now I want to show you a couple things that I finished 2 years ago and never fully finished. So one of them, I guess I didn't take this out of the packaging, is this Stacy Nash. She has two patterns that are very similar to this, where you have the tree and the pumpkins, and of course I have both of the patterns. And I made it on the blue, that it's probably not the same blue, and somebody asked me what this blue is, and I don't know, because again, 2 years ago, before I was keeping good records, but I had finished it and never fully finished it, so I did that this week, put the little pom-poms on, and I love how it turned out. And I usually fill it with lizard litter, but the more I hear you guys talk about sawdust, I just asked my husband if he could save me sawdust, so I'm going to try that. And then the next one is another one of these little smalls from Blackbird, And I changed a couple things. I left off the no house and I substituted the word harvest. I left off the mouse down at the bottom there and I put in 2 cats playing. I don't really like mice. So, and this is a big, what was this done on? That looks like 18 count, maybe. Let's see if I can hold it like this so you can see the 2 cats playing at the bottom and the word harvest. Because no house didn't make a whole lot of sense with no mouse. So this one was really fun too, and now I've got 2 new pillows for my autumn displays, which is super fun. And then at Hobby Lobby this week, I got this galvanized trough and some of their little acorn pine cone stuff, and put in these 3 little patterns, which is, I don't think I can reach that pattern anymore. Anyways, it's a pattern that comes with all 3 of them, and I think it was a Plum Street. I'll have to double check on that. So that was fun to have those, and a good place to put those, because I also changed my 3-tiered shelf out behind me with some of my other fall smalls, and so I don't have a whole dough bowl full of smalls anymore, because I put some on that triple shelf back there, and some of these bigger ones I prop up in different places in my house. So that trough seemed to fit the bill this time. All right, and then I wanted to talk to you about stitching parts and pieces. What does that mean? Well, this Jeanette Douglas is an example of stitching parts and pieces, because I chose just the part that I wanted to stitch out of that, just this middle section. And I agree that border, that flower border, is absolutely gorgeous, but I didn't want to do all that. So I want to encourage you to look at your patterns in a different way. Look at maybe what parts and pieces you can take out of a pattern you have and turn it into something else. So here's another example of that. I shared this piece with you last time, my cinnamon stars, and actually, remember, I'm giving that pattern away as one of our giveaways, so coming to one of you soon. When I went to the Silver Needle stitching retreat 3 years ago, one of the patterns that we got as a project for the weekend was this. And I loved it because I learned how to make a flat fold, and it was stitched on bigger fabric, so it went super fast. But do you notice that this comes from the little corner of the bigger piece? So they gave us the whole pattern, but then they took and made a copy of just this little corner, which is the scarecrow, the stalks of corn, and then they tucked in a pumpkin button and the moon button, and somebody at my table didn't want to put the pumpkin button in, so I put both pumpkin buttons on mine. And how cute is that? And it doesn't really feel like a duplication when I have it up in my house, because it looks so different. You know, when you stitch it on the bigger fabric with thicker threads, again, super fast to stitch, and just another way to use it. So it's fun to take little parts and pieces of patterns and make them into pincushions or flat folds. Certainly great if you want to stitch a little something for a friend, but don't have, you know, days and days to work on a bigger piece. Just stitch a little something, and then they can tuck it out for the holidays and then put it away when they're done. So I just wanted to encourage you to do some of that, and that was just a fun example. It was so funny at the time. I was just newly back into cross stitching, and I had bought my Houses of Hawk Run Hollow, Village of Hawk Run Hollow, and remember, that's all I was going to do. I was not going to get back into stitching full time because I have my hands full with knitting and my shop and all of that stuff. And so the only other pattern I'd bought was Cinnamon Stars, because who could not do Cinnamon Stars? It's adorable. And so we go to the retreat, and what do I get? Another copy of Cinnamon Stars. And I thought, what are the odds of all the patterns out there? The only one I have that we could possibly get is that one. So that's why I have 2 copies, and that's why one of you are getting one of those copies today. So it benefited somebody in the long run. Okay, I want to talk real quick about my haul. Got some fun things, no patterns, just other fun things. So first of all, the thread discussion that we had on, you know, how I didn't like the coverage of 1/2 on 36 count. But I've decided 36 count. After 25 count Lugana, which I love stitching 1/1, 36 count is my next favorite. And several of you mentioned Sulky Threads, and how Sulky Threads are 1.5 to 2 times as thick as DMC. And they come on a spool like this. They're 50 yards, and it's $1.69, sulky.com. So I purchased, what, 12 or 13? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 13 of these. I figured Christmas colors, some blues. I got a white and an ecru and a black. And so I'm really looking forward to trying this on one of my pieces. The consensus was that hand-dyed flosses and hand-dyed fabrics are have a little better coverage 1/1. So the fabrics, I think the holes tighten up a little bit in the hand dyeing process. The threads just are a little bit thicker. So maybe it's just DMC that I don't like 1/1 on 36 count. So I'm going with that premise, and we'll see how that goes. But before next time, I'm going to work with this and have something to show you guys, because I'm really anxious to see how that goes. Which also made me realize this is 12 weight thread, and I've got, I don't know, so many spools of Valdani 12 weight for my wool applique. So I'm going to try some of that too. Then I got this project bag from Goose, because I love old-fashioned Santas, and I love this fabric line. My yarn shop, we used to have a fabric. It used to be half yarn, half fabric. Started out just yarn. My shop is called the Loopy U. And then it was yarn and fabric, and we had fabric for 6 or 7 years. And then we decided to get out of fabric this past January and go just to expanding our yarn selection, which has been super fun. But I do miss the cute fabrics in my shop. So this is a cute bag from Goose, my first Goose project bag. And then I bought the set because I love these thread keepers. This is kind of a, I guess it's felt. And so when you're stitching and you've got the leftover bits, you can tuck it here and they don't fall off. You know how you've got a strand of 6 and you pull off 1 and then you've got 5 sitting there. And I don't know how many times I've gotten up out of my chair and the extra strand sticks to my sleeve, and then I walk in the kitchen for a drink of water and then it falls off, and we have cats. And cats or dogs, not good to have loose floss. So this is really handy to have, and she had some that were sets, and I thought that was a great idea. So I got that, happy about that. And then on somebody's channel, Carol, Saltbox Stitcher, and somebody else shared these too. I got some Colonial Boards, they're called, from Homestead Needlework on Etsy, and Needlework has an E at the end of it. And these are just really fun, and they're very reasonably priced. They're, I don't know, $14.50 on up maybe. And I've got a couple of 4th of July pieces that I'm hoping I can finish off on these two. And then I have that pattern Icy Red by Tanya, and she had the boards for that, and she has the boards in both the size for 32/36 count and I think 40/46 count. So she has different size boards for that particular pattern, and since I have that pattern, I'm looking forward to doing that. So those were kind of fun to get in the mail. She packages each of them in a nice bag so they don't scratch against each other, so that was kind of fun. And then I got these fun wool trees, and again, because I saw them somewhere. I think I saw these on Instagram actually, so I can't blame Flosstube for that. But how cute are these felted wool trees? It has a little stuck in an antique wooden block. And these are from Michelle 87, 2 L's in Michelle. Michelle 87. Her company is Little Stitches, but you can find her on Instagram. I don't think she has an Etsy account, but you can message her on Instagram and tell her you're interested in these adorable trees. And again, they're very reasonably priced. I love that I have an S block. I don't know if she did that on purpose, but that was kind of fun. And then she sent just this cute little old antique clothespin with some homespun around it in the package. So Michelle 87 on Instagram. Okay, and Instagram. Are you guys on Instagram? Here's my thought. I know that there's a lot of back and forth about social media and what pictures you should put out there and what you should never put out there. I really want to encourage you to record your stitching journey. And for some people that is like in a journal or in a notebook. Somewhere that you can record things like what count fabric did you use and what threads did you use, and maybe even why you picked that pattern, what was going on at that time that made you want to do that. But if you don't want to keep that in a journal, then I want to encourage you to get an Instagram account just for your stitching. I have an Instagram account for just my personal family, friends. I have an Instagram account for our shop, and then I have an Instagram account for my cross stitching, and that's ColoradoCrossStitcher. Follow me. I'd love to see your stuff too. But that way I can look back when somebody asks a question. I've gotten better at notating that, or somebody will ask in the comments, what is that fabric, and then I notate that. But I want to get even better about putting the details in there so that I can look back and have a record of that. Or, you know, my descendants someday, if they want to look back and say, you know, what's the deal with this piece? What's the history or what's the story behind that? And they can look back at that. Now you can of course put pictures of family and friends and what you had for dinner and all the things you want to put on Instagram. Or you can just purely make it about your cross stitching, and my cross stitching account is just about the cross stitching. So you don't have to give up a whole lot of information. You don't even have to say your name to open an Instagram account. You just have to make up your Instagram name. But I really encourage you to maybe think about that. The other thing is, it's super encouraging and inspiring to go through everybody else's feed. Like on my cross stitching account, I follow all of my favorite stitchers on there so I can see what they're working on. You know, a lot of them don't have floss tubes, and it's just so much fun to see. And I get ideas, I get finishing ideas, and on Instagram you can save things. There's a little, looks like a little ribbon or something underneath the post, and you can click that and add that to an album. So I have an album of saves for finishing ideas and display ideas and things that I'm going to have to buy. And so it's just a fun way to keep track of all that. So if you don't have an Instagram account, I just want to encourage you to maybe look into that, or at least start a journal or a notebook where you notate all of these important things. All right, so we have winners for my giveaways from last time, and I think the words were cinnamon flowers and friends, or cinnamon flower friend something. I did the right thing on the auto generator winner thing, but I can't remember if it was plural or not. Anyway, it was so fun to read your sentences trying to combine cinnamon, friends, and flowers in there. And again, I don't mind at all if you just leave a comment and then at the end say cinnamon, flowers, friends, or whatever the keyword is. You don't have to come up with a sentence, but I'm telling you what, I was really in the mood for cinnamon scones and a cinnamon latte by the time I got done reading all those comments. Crystal mentioned that there is a Torani, you know, Torani, the coffee syrup you can buy. I think that's what Starbucks uses. You can also buy it at World Market. Torani has a brown sugar cinnamon syrup that I am so going to buy. That sounds delicious to add to my coffee. It made me think of this. I had a customer come by the house one time, and I had just made coffee, and she was picking up product from me. And she came in the house. She said, "Oh, that coffee smells so good." And I said, "Would you like a cup?" She said, "Oh, I don't really drink that much coffee." She said, "In fact, I didn't drink it at all until I got married." She said, "But my husband was a big coffee drinker. And he used to say to me, 'Vandy, let's get a hot cup of coffee and sit down and have a chat.'" And she said he made it sound so inviting and so wonderful. She said, "Every time I agreed to it." And she said, I learned to like coffee because I just wanted to sit down with a hot cup of coffee and have a chat with him. And so he was long gone, but she said the smell of coffee just makes her have such fond memories of that time. So that reminded me of that when I was reading about crystals. Torani, brown sugar, cinnamon, yum. Okay, so we have 3 giveaways, and I used the random comment picker. And so the first one was for the blooming flowers, Jeanette Douglas pattern, and you had to use the word flowers. And let's see, Allie Millmeyer, you have won this. If you can click on the box below, you will find my email address and email me with your address, and I will get that sent right off to you. And then we had cinnamon stars, and also in the cinnamon stars, let's see, I guess all 3 of them, I have needle minders from Kelmscott for you too. So I've tucked one of those in. And so cinnamon stars is going to Diana Stearns. So Diana, if you can get a hold of me, I would love to get this mailed off to you. And then the Friends kit, which includes the fabric and all the flosses, is going to Debbie Foster. Again, Debbie, contact me at my email address and I will get that shipped off to you. Also, I still have this kit with all the pieces from our first video drawing, and that is Lizzie Johns. So Lizzie Johns, you have till my next video to get in touch with me because you won this, and if I don't hear from you, I'll put that in another drawing in the future. All right, so those are the 3 giveaways. And my next giveaway, because I hit 4,000 subscribers, which is just so fun, you guys. Thank you for subscribing. It really is fun to watch those numbers and connect with so many of you guys. So I had decided for each 1,000 subscribers I was going to do a giveaway. So this is the 4,000 giveaway, and again it's a kit, and there it is. Comes with the threads, a needle, the fabric, and an adorable magnetic ruler that's hand painted to match that pattern. It says, "A friend overlooks your broken fence and admires the flowers in your garden." So if you would like to be eligible for that, leave me a comment. Use the word garden in there. And again, don't mention giveaway, contest, or drawing, because that apparently attracts the wrong people, and we don't want the wrong people to be winning our prizes. And be 18 years or older so that you can give me your address if you are a winner, and I will draw for that the next time. Okay, now, question of the day. And I'm really curious about this. I see so many people sharing projects, and they say, I used the called for fabrics and the called for threads. And I think I have used the called for fabric once or twice, and probably by accident. Like, I have never bought a pattern and looked at the fabric and said, I also need this fabric. I think that comes from starting in the 80s and then not really stitching much during the hand-dyed fabric when it all started. And in the 80s, we were just all using Aida. I mean, most of us. There were probably some people who were using specialty linens, but at my LNS in the 80s, it was Aida. Different counts, a few different colors, but not hand-dyed colors, just, you know, solid, a blue or a red or a green or a pink. Those are the ones I remember, white and cream. So in my mind, I just buy fabrics that I love, colors that I love, and counts that I like, and when I get a pattern, I pull the threads, and I do usually use the called for threads, or at least the one version of it. If they call for silks, you know, a lot of times I'll use the hand-dyed or whatever, although I do love silks now. But anyway, I never pay attention to the fabric. So my question of the day, get to the point, my question of the day is, do you usually use the called for fabrics and the called for threads? Or do you pick your own fabrics and threads? And I'm sure that some of you do some of one and some of the other. What do you do most? Do you mostly try to get the fabric it's called for and the threads called for? Or do you not? All right, I'll report back next time, tell you what everybody said. All right, my plans for between now and the next video. I want to work more on my sampler row. I want to work more on my Plymouth sampler, which those will mesh right into September sampler, September, whatever it's called. I'm dying to start this GGR, not GGR, yeah, it is GGR, Martha Scott pattern, and I did get all of the threads since the last time. I thought about doing them in silks, but I can't. I'm having a hard time getting the silks or getting somebody to email me back about silks. I've been emailing a shop, I'm not hearing back. So I would love to do this in silks, but I didn't hear back and I'm too anxious to start, so I bought the hand-dyed colors. I know there's silk conversions that I could have used next time. So I would love to start that, and I want to do a small because I want to be able to use those sulky threads and try those out. So those are my plans, and I'd love to know what you're stitching in September. If you want to leave a comment. Are you doing samplers? Are you not into samplers? I know a lot of you don't do samplers. Are you doing some fun fall smalls? Are you up to your head in smalls? Really, I decided I like 3 different things. I like smalls, I like samplers, and then I like the fun pieces, you know, that I can put in happy frames, which don't fall into a small or sampler category. So I've got the happy frames, and then I thought, you know, I've seen some really cool Halloween patterns. I'm not so much into Halloween patterns. I love fall patterns because you can keep those up through Thanksgiving. And then I kind of decided I need a holiday wall. You know, I want a sampler wall, but I also want a wall that I can put up framed pictures from different holidays, because not all of the holiday things are going to be smallable. That's a new word, smallable. Made small. You can't make them small. Although if I pick parts and pieces, maybe so. So those are the kinds of things I look for, and so I'd love to know what you're working on in September for the next few weeks until I see you again, and if you do samplers for Sampler September. All right, that's all for today. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm already looking forward to our next time together. Bye-bye.